Hey everybody, Pete A. Turner, executive producer and host of Your Break It Down show. Today's episode features a Navy SEAL named Jon Macaskill, and John's been out there on the podcast circuits if you've seen him. We're going to let those folks talk about his SEAL adventures. We're going to talk about his latest thing, Veterans Path, which is an organization, a nonprofit, where he is an assistant executive director. And their mission is to take mindfulness, meditation, and try to help veterans, but also women, men, anybody really. And I guess this episode is really timely because with the current COVID situation, we're all cooped up in the house, and that's abnormal, and it's making depression a little bit worse and maybe creating a little hopelessness, that kind of thing. Here's my recommendation. Take those people, whether it's you or someone else, and go and meditate. You can use small little apps that are free. You can just spend time outside in the sun. If you have sun where you are, we have sun where we are. It's really nice. But just spend a moment being mindful. Work on that meditative state, and I promise you will feel better when you come out of it. It's impossible to not feel well. And if it didn't work, you do it again, another 5 minutes, another 10 minutes, however long you can go down. It's a practice. You continue to do it, and you do get better at it. And I swear the results are great. You're going to love John's story. Speaking of current events, definitely go check out Veterans Path, and you can see what they do. They have, I guess you'd call them retreats and events where you can go 1, 2, 3, 5 days, and you can start to really get the power in the environment where it's real. And if you're a veteran, with other veterans who can understand where you're coming from, and you can share in a way and heal together. It's really, really powerful stuff. I'm super excited to have Jon on and talk about what they do. Hey, other current events. This is coming out soon, so I'm going to go ahead and plant my flag right now, but I am working on a course for podcast hosts and folks who do interviews in general. That'll be coming out. I'm using this time, with this downtime, to create it, but that course should be coming out hopefully before May or maybe in the early part of May. That'll come out, and that'll be a chance for you all to kind of get my thoughts professionally about how to host things. Making it so it's inexpensive so anybody can afford it, but look for that to come soon. Basically, how to host like a spy, interviewing at the advanced level. If that's interesting to you, hey, send me a note at pete@breakitdownshow.com. I'd love to hear from you about it and tell you more about this course. It is coming. It'll be done soon. It's about halfway done right now. All right, here's the other thing. As always, Save the Brave, savethebrave.org. That's our charity here, and we'd love to get your support. If you want to know more, let me know. pete@breakitdownshow.com. I'd like to have you involved. All right, here comes my man, Jon Macaskill.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This
East.
is Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hey, this is Jon Macaskill, and you're listening to The Break It Down Show.
And now, The Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Got Jon on the show with me, and we're talking about, sometimes we have these heated conversations about strategy, and sometimes it's about these big academic ideas and political science or whatever. And sometimes we just want to look out for one another. And so we're going to spend some time looking out for one another in this episode because Jon is he's a veteran, of course. And, Jon, I like to say, we try to take the Letterman jacket off and not get into the no shit there I was stuff too much because, I've not put foot on a battlefield in, I don't know, almost 10 years now. So when we try to move on, it's not that we ignore that time or don't reference it, but it's not the thrust. So really, I want to get into Veterans Path and talk about that. So I guess just open with that. Give us an idea of Veterans Path and what your guys' charter is.
Sure. Well, first off, thanks for having me on the show.
Hey, you're welcome.
And then second off, thanks also for not going back into the battlefield talk because that gets old after a little while. I mean, I enjoy reminiscing a little bit. It's been a while since I've stepped foot on the battlefield as well. So, I appreciate your acknowledging that there's more to me than just the military piece. So, Veterans Path, we are a nonprofit founded in 2008. We are teaching veterans the life-changing and life-saving skills of meditation and mindfulness. And we do that in typically outdoor settings to help them achieve a sense of peace, acceptance, transformation, and honor. And that's where path in our name comes from: peace, acceptance, transformation, and honor. And I've been with them. I'm still active duty technically. I am with them in an internship role through the SOCOM Care Coalition. And I'm serving as their deputy executive director and their podcast host and producer as well. We started a podcast ourselves back in November, interviewing alums of some of our programs and also high-performing athletes, veterans, military members, and corporate leaders who practice mindfulness and meditation in the hope that we can kind of break down the stigma and the stereotype of mindfulness and meditation, because it's starting to get more mainstream these days. But there are still people, when you mention the word mindfulness or mention the word meditation, their eyes kind of glaze over and they think that you're going to try to sell them a false bill of goods or tell them about some woo-woo pleasure place. There's a lot more to it than that. There's science and physiology behind why it works. And that's actually, I needed somebody to tell me that piece before I became a believer and a practitioner myself. So I fully understand their stance, but I'm hoping to break that down through Veterans Path.
Man, I mean, you're speaking my language, because as I started to recognize, and I don't know how long it took you, but it took me a long time to recognize my PTSD, because I was still high functioning, especially while deployed. Mm-hmm. I didn't have time for that. I was so busy working. The other stuff was not present. But right. Once I started to become mindful and realize that some of my reactions, probably most of my reactions, were out of scope with what reality was, mindfulness and meditation have been a big key to helping me. I wouldn't say key, because that would indicate that we're unlocking something. I'm still working on it, man. Like my cortisol pathways are like just giant gutters, so my instant response is this response that guys like us, I'm like, it's too much. I've had to learn to go, hey, I live in Orange County. Everything's pretty sweet here. No one's actively trying to kill me. I'm not trying to find, and I'm not talking to people about the worst moments of their life. Things are actually pretty good. But that took a long time to not only hear that, but to believe it, and then to learn how to ratchet back the super escalating, hyper alert anxiety, all those things that I was experiencing. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Our flight and fight mechanisms, they're highly tuned, right? I mean, they're highly tuned just in humans in general. And then coming back from having been on the battlefield, I think they're even more so. Those become our natural responses, fight or flight or freeze, to different scenarios. And we can rewire those through mindfulness and meditation. And that's kind of the physiology that I talk about, is that amygdala, which is our fight or flight response part of our brain. It's about the size of an almond, if you can kind of imagine that. And then the prefrontal cortex of our brain, that's the part that's responsible for cognitive thinking. That's, a much larger part of our brain, but we're responding with that little almond-sized amygdala. And we can actually train ourselves to respond more appropriately, more pragmatically through the prefrontal cortex. Through meditation, we can train it through meditation. That the wiring between the two actually gets thickened through meditation. And the very process of trying to meditate, as your mind wanders off into the 1,000 different thoughts and bounces around that monkey mind. Once you notice that monkey mind bouncing around, bring it back to the focus point, whether it's your breath or whether it's some bodily sensation or some mantra that you have. That very act going back and forth, that's what rewires your brain. And that is how you can actually start to respond rather than react to impulses that we're experiencing, whether it's impulses that are there from past experiences, from post-traumatic stress or other experiences. Somebody's handing us an assignment, and we're responding or reacting rather way off base. Because we're reacting with our amygdala instead of our prefrontal cortex.
Yeah, it's like you're reading my chart.
Good. We're on the same page.
Yeah, totally on the same page. These are the things, though, right? Like as we try to sort through these problems, and the willingness to recognize, I don't know, to get past the fact that this isn't weakness, that it's part of who we are at this point in our lives, and we also don't need that super high risk behavior, that acceptance of high risk, that we really can just kind of ease into this more less action-filled life. And I want to take this moment to say this too. I'm really glad you said fight, flight, or freeze, because freezing is, it's a limbic response, and we often just say fight or flight, and we don't account for it. And when you see freeze in your own actions or in someone else, you understand that a lack of reaction is the reaction. So how do you train someone to react in a way that's appropriately, or respond to the lack of reaction or the freezing thing? It's such a powerful gate to unlock. Like, it's okay to take a moment to think about this, as long as you're cognizant that you might be stuck in this freeze loop, if you will.
Sure. Yeah. And it can be, it's obviously debilitating is the freezing piece, but like you mentioned, for us to see somebody in that state, we think that's weakness, but it's a natural response. Fight, flight, or freeze is a third response there. And that is where the meditation comes more into play, in training your mind to respond and develop that resilience. Not so much what we're talking about in kind of healing from post-traumatic stress or depression, anxiety, but in actually preparing your mind to face those extreme stress moments. So, if we are preparing our soldiers, preparing our military service members prior to going into combat, by teaching them these life-saving skills, it's life-saving in that way. It's also life-saving after the fact, but it's life-saving in that it's going to make them better soldiers, better warriors. And when I say that, I'm not meaning, necessarily better at killing.
Right.
Then, a lot of the time people are like, well, why would we want to take these peaceful skills and train people to be better killers? Well, we're not. We're training them to be better warriors, and being a better warrior means a better thinker. Yeah. And you could actually diffuse situations on the battlefield by thinking on your feet, rather than taking a shot that you should never have taken, which could have escalated, 1,000 times. You actually take a second, think about what's happening on the battlefield, and diffuse a situation rather. So it's life-saving in multiple ways, pre-event and post-event.
How did you get involved with this? Why did this path present itself in a way that you could take it? Because look, there's lots of people that are trying to help, and those of us that are first off willing to accept help, big hurdle. How did this become your path?
Yeah, funny enough, I had that same hurdle. I was struggling with anxiety and depression and stress, and I was talking with a psychologist who recommended mindfulness and meditation. And at first I kind of laughed at him, and it's like, hey man, I'm a big, hairy, scary frog man. And I can't be telling my guys that I'm meditating. I was embarrassed to admit that I was even seeing a psychologist at first. And then he explained the science and the benefits behind it, and some very high performing individuals who practice it. And once I started seeing that, the data behind it, then I realized, okay, well, maybe this is something I can try. It's like somebody showing you, hey, if you go to the gym and eat healthy, you're going to get in better shape.
Yeah.
Well, so I took it, started practicing very basically with some apps on my phone. Took it for about 2 weeks, or did it for about 2 weeks, and then went back to him and I was like, hey man, it's not doing what I thought it was going to do. He's like, well, that's like going to the gym for 2 weeks and expecting that you're going to be this Superman afterwards.
Right.
So, I took a little dose of humility there, and took another few weeks, another 6 or 8 weeks after that point. And that's when I started to see differences in who I was and how I was responding. And then I wanted to know more. So I started reading about it, started, looking up everything online about it, and, finding out who the practitioners and the teachers were out there. At the same time as I was starting to transition, or starting my transition in the military, from the military out into the civilian sector, I had one of my military mentors sit me down and say, you need to figure out what it is you want to do. And I was starting to look at all these jobs in different industries, and finance and commercial real estate, and, a lot of great jobs, but nothing was really jumping out at me. In the meantime, I'm sitting there telling people what I'm doing in meditation, as they're starting to come to me asking me what I'm doing differently, because they started to see differences in who I was and how I was doing things. And then I realized, well, heck, I could do this for a living. And I thought, hey, I'm going to found a nonprofit that does this. And in doing some research, I found that Veterans Path already existed. So through networking, I got connected with them, and they brought me on board in this internship role. So here I am.
Here I am. Well, one of the things that I developed along the way, not that I'm the answer to everything, but I like to find gateway things. What is the smallest step that I can take that allows me to advance what we do, And I realized that mindfulness and meditation can happen throughout the day. And I call it like micro meditation, where I just, even at a red light, close my eyes, take a deep breath and, cleanse, calm, whatever I have time for. And even if it's just a mini meditation, it was like, it wasn't a full workout, but it was like you got on and you ran 100 yards real fast. You go run 100 yards, you're going to feel different than you did before you did that. And I've found a lot of value in that, because you can be at a red light, you can be look, I'm in LA in traffic. You might sit still for 30 seconds on the freeway. So, you do that as a way to kind of keep the balloon from inflating and possibly even slowly deflate it a little bit. What are your thoughts?
Sure. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the very different definition of mindfulness, right? You've got mindfulness and you've got meditation, and you can kind of picture two circles of a Venn diagram. There's overlap. You've got thousands of different ways to meditate. You've got transcendental meditation, you've got mindfulness meditation, and then you've got mindfulness, and that's just being present of the here and now without any judgment. And there's an overlap there, between mindfulness and meditation. That's the mindfulness meditation. Well, that one circle by itself over here, that mindfulness, that's what you're doing there in paying attention to, that red light, and just kind of decompressing, taking a few breaths, focusing on those breaths, maybe focusing on the tactile sensation of the steering wheel in your hand, or if the wheels are rolling, focusing on the sound of the wheels rolling in your car. That's actually a great one to do both to and from work, because sometimes getting to work can be stressful in traffic, and the last thing you want to do is walk in the door at work already stressed out, and then vice versa. Driving home from work, sit in traffic, and you walk through the door and you're stressed out. It's a great way to practice those skills and decompress prior to walking through either the door at work or the door at home, and really set you up for a much more productive day at work, or a much better evening, or whenever it is that you're at home with, by yourself or with your family. You can focus more on what's important to you. So absolutely, I fully agree with those little mini meditations, as you call them. Mm-hmm. And there's many ways to do that, focusing on your breath, focusing on a quick body scan, just the sensations that you're feeling in your fingers, your feet, your knees, everywhere, focusing on the smells, touch, taste. Yeah, there's a great many ways to do that, and being focused on the here and now.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I mean, and you're right. It is just a form of mindfulness. And yeah, it's funny. Like right now, my back hurts, and I can think about that and do kind of an inventory. And, just you go through and you start to reassess at I guess a more granular scale, whatever form of crisis your body or spirit are in. And then it's like, okay, my back is radiating a lot of pain right now. But really, when I get into it, like, what is that pain? It's a 5. Mm-hmm. It's not that big of a deal. Yeah. But if I allow it to, it can become bigger than it needs to be. And then I just have to take time to slow down. I totally get that. How do you guys build these skills with a bunch of hairy, scary frogmen?
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here. And if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
How do you guys build these skills with a bunch of hairy, scary frogmen?
Well, right now, we're focused on our population, veteran population that we focus on are stress injured or morally injured vets, and that's after they hang up the uniform. So we're working with men and women from all the services, again, after they hang up the uniform. Now we're going through a pretty significant strategic pivot to where we're going to be offering our services to more members, not just stressed and morally injured, but those that are still wearing the uniform, that we want to give these services or teach these practices earlier, again, so that they can develop that sense of resilience and be better performers and handle more stress in the long run. But how do we teach it? I mean, it's just like we would teach anybody else, very, very simply, early, A lot of people say, hey, I can't meditate because my mind races, get that monkey mind, going back to that again. But if we teach them very simple, do it 2 minutes here, 3 minutes there, and then cumulatively, as they get a little bit more used to it, then we start ramping it up to 15, 20 minutes. But the way that we do it right now is through a retreat. We have 1 day, 3 day, and 5 day retreats for our veterans, and those retreats are completely covered for the vets through donation and fundraising, minus the travel. The travel to the locations is on the vet, but the time at the retreat is covered. And through those 3 days or 5 days or even the 1 day, we gradually ramp up to a more intense form of meditation. But then we also teach them the mindfulness piece, like we were just talking about. We'll take a walk through the woods or down to the beach, and they'll notice things that they wouldn't have noticed before. We'll point it out and be like, hey, maybe notice the smells or the sounds. And then when we get together and eat, we'll focus on actually being mindful as we eat, because I'm a certified mindfulness teacher. And one of the things that we did while I was getting that certification is we give them 3 raisins, and you take 30 minutes to eat those 3 raisins. And by far, those are the best raisins I've ever eaten, because you sit and pay attention to the texture and the smell. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Eating mindfully is a total game changer. And I mean, it makes you really enjoy a meal a lot more than wolfing something down, as you're driving in between meetings, which, sometimes you have to do because you've got a full schedule. But if you have the time to take it and do it mindfully, it's a game changer.
I want to get back to that mindful eating, but let's also give an idea when you guys do these retreats. Okay, I got to get there. But where am I flying to?
So right now we have them out in the San Francisco area. We also got actually closer to Monterey, Carmel Valley. And then we've got some we're going to be having some out in Colorado Springs, which is actually where we're moving our headquarters to. We have been out in the San Francisco area. We're moving our headquarters to Colorado Springs. And then we're going to be offering some out here in the Virginia Beach area, which is where I live right now anyway. So those are the 3 locations that we fly into and out of.
No, it's fantastic. Those are good locations. I'm a Bay Area guy, so those mountains there's a lot of healing in those hills. You really can do those things.
Absolutely.
And that racing mind, that's that gym analogy, or you and I both swim. If someone says, "Hey, teach me how to swim," like, well, first off, I can show you the shape of a stroke, but you got to start by being calm in the water. Like, yes, you can. I'm doing Cody fingers. Yes, you can swim. But if you can't go 50 meters across water without touching something, that's where your work is. If you can't fight the water. The water will always win. It doesn't ever give up.
Same as your mind, right?
Right, exactly. It very much is like that. So when your mind is racing all the time, your mind is not going to give up. You have to learn how to relax so that you can actually work through that thing. Talk about some of those breakthroughs that you've seen for yourself or with your peers. Because look, we are always, the things we've done, us in particular, it's so complex and sophisticated. And even though we don't really talk about it very often, really, 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 really fucking dangerous,
Oh, yeah.
And so... So our minds, if you took a bunch of guys of our caliber, a bunch of group guys, CAG guys, and you left them alone to their own devices in the wilderness, you would have a lot of shit happen. Like there'd be trees getting cut down, someone would build a fort, someone would drink a bottle of Jim Beam, it would be a lot of craziness. There wouldn't be a lot of sitting around and doing nothing,
Yeah, that's true. I think that's one of the great things about our community or our type. You kind of think of us all cut from the same type of cloth. It's definitely one of the things I'm going to miss when I hang up the uniform. But there's definitely breakthroughs there that can happen, even amongst those who consider ourselves the toughest warriors. Really, if you go back in history to the Spartans and the samurai, they were essentially cut from the same cloth too, right?
Right.
But they practiced mindfulness and meditation, and they did, in fact, do it to prepare them for battle. They were preparing them for being a warrior. There's nothing that prevents us as warriors from refining our minds, just like we refine our bodies, just like we refine all our shooting skills, our jumping skills, everything else. Why not refine our mind to make us better and more effective and more empathetic warriors on the battlefield? Because empathy on the battlefield is important. I know that sounds kind of out there, but I think it's important to truly winning wars these days.
Well, these days in particular, and when you say a more empathetic warrior, and the words are prominent in your history and like your guys' about statement is emotional intelligence, and you have a big red line under the intelligence part. That empathy, a lot of times, saves our lives when we go do this dangerous stuff because we can't account for every threat, especially if we're not in the room when that threat occurs and can be squashed by someone we're empathetic with,
Right. Oh, totally. It's truly understanding. This goes back to the art of war and Sun Tzu, truly understanding our enemy. That's empathy in and of itself. And just taking it to another level. And again, these days, in the complexity of the wars that we're fighting, it's hard to know who your enemy is. Like literally know who your enemy is.
Day to day.
It's quite important to know. Yeah, day to day. Yeah, I heard a great quote from a guy that I was talking with yesterday. He mentioned you never know if the hand that you're feeding one day is the same hand that's pulling the trigger at night.
Yeah,
and it's so true. This day and age, it's truly, literally tough to know your enemy, but also figuratively. And but the meditation does help to improve that empathy piece, so that you at least figuratively can know your enemy.
Right.
I don't know that it helps so much with the literal side.
I do want to spend a moment with that just to kind of illustrate what you're talking about just a little more, because when you go to a place where instability is the norm, the changing of sides is a norm. It's not changing sides. It's survival. It's how you do this. So today, while there's a seal sitting on my couch, I'm going to feed this guy. But the next guy on the couch might be scarier, might be more persuasive in some other way. And so, yeah, you literally are like sort of always fighting for the attention. And I call it the affect over the effect. And if I can reliably create a positive affect, and when I say positive, I mean towards my goal, I'm going to be safer, and I'm going to make my community safer. I'm going to do my job better. I'm going to help you guys do your job better, because look, the next door you kick down won't be the first one you go, this could be the wrong door, oh, it was the wrong door. I mean, how damaging is that? So that empathy is something that we all need, because our world is so one-way empathetic. Like, we're empathetic towards our peers, but it's often hard to spin that camera around and see how our actions are perceived through our partners, through the community that we're serving. It's really easy to get lost in that and focused on mission.
So true, man. Spot on.
So, okay, let's. I want to get back into the mindful eating thing. Let's talk about that. That's a new concept.
Yeah. So, just like you were talking about those, little mini meditations as you're driving that can help you to decompress. Well, sometimes eating through the day is the only time somebody may get a break, or at least in your mind, it might be the only time that they get a break. If it's a 30-minute lunch break. Well, during that 30 minutes, rather than wolfing down a hamburger and fries, you can still get the hamburger and fries, but just eat it slowly and truly pay attention to each bite. Like, as you grab the burger, take in the smells. That's being mindful of that sensation of smell. Then take a bite and be mindful of the texture of the burger in your mouth, and then obviously the taste. And then as you swallow, notice the salivary glands kicking in, and actually notice the physical sensation of swallowing that burger. You're paying attention to all those different sensations as you're going through it. Even seeing the burger, right, is one thing. Some of us miss that, seeing the burger altogether. Like, grab it, freaking wolf it down, boom, you're on to the next task. And if somebody asks you at the end of the day what you ate for lunch, you forgot what you ate. Well, really paying attention, you're going to enjoy the flavors, you're going to enjoy the textures, everything more. But not only that, you're going to get something out of it. It's going to be one of those mini meditations that you were talking about, and it actually helps to bring your stress levels down. You talked about your cortisol and being a gutter.
Yeah.
Well, you can kind of reverse that. And really decompress, reduce your heart rate, tap into your parasympathetic nervous system, reduce your heart rate, reduce your blood pressure while you're eating, and then come out of lunch recharged. A lot of us have, that 2:00 slump in the afternoon. Sometimes if you eat properly and eat more mindfully, you can recharge while you're eating to make it through that last few hours of the day without hitting that 2:00 slump. So that's what I mean by mindful eating. And you can do it obviously anytime. It's not just lunch,
right?
Or any meal, but yeah, that's it.
How well does this stuff translate to the civilian world? Folks, there's a lot of folks that are listening here. Heck, they live in other countries even. How does this work for someone day to day as opposed to just, obviously it translates, but talk a little bit about how that would help someone.
Well, incidentally, I do that on the side is I teach civilians this to apply in corporate America because it does translate directly. It helps with reducing stress, helps with reducing anxiety, depression. That's things that it reduces. We also talk about heart rate, blood pressure. Well, in the civilian sector, the corporate sector, it increases your focus, productivity, creativity, and communicative skills. So quite frankly, we as men we probably need that more than our female counterparts because we use the less intuitive side of our brain, less creative side of our brain more often. That's not true. I'm sorry. Women are more easily able to tap into the side of their brain where they are more creative and more intuitive than men are. So make sure you quote that correctly. Yeah, so I said that wrong. I'm probably going to get some angry listeners later. But anyhow, this enables us to communicate better, be more creative, more productive. If you meditate or you're mindful at the beginning of your workday, like I was talking about on that drive, right, to work. Now you've meditated the last 5 minutes in the parking lot or whatever. Now you walk in through the work door and somebody's in your face already saying, hey, did you get my email? You've got to answer these phone calls. Hey, you've got these 17 things on your to-do list. You're more likely to be focused going through that to-do list and actually get through several of those things rather than being all spaced out, trying to do little pieces of this, little pieces of that. So this translates directly. It's not something that is military exclusive, not at all.
What about these retreats? Let's get a sense for what happens. How often do they happen? Those veterans that are out there thinking, man, I can fly to Colorado Springs. I can fly to California. Hell, I'm in California. Yep. What's in that? What are the nuts and bolts?
So it's all on our site, veteranspath.org. We have programs that are set up periodically. We try to have one day Pathfinder retreats every couple of months. Right now, they're based in Colorado and the San Francisco, Carmel Valley, Monterey area. And then we do the 3-day and the 5-day retreats. Those are fewer and further between. But yeah, it's all right there on our site, veteranspath.org. And then, one piece that I forgot is our anchor programs. That's a 4-month program where you start with 5 days intensive, much like I was discussing before. You kind of ramp up to learning how to meditate. Then you go home to wherever it is you're from, but you have online access to the facilitators. You meet periodically with Zoom calls like we are right now. And you have a Facebook group, that kind of thing. And then you come back at the end of that 4 months and you do a 2-day weekend intensive again. And there's an assessment prior to and assessment afterwards of people's state of mind. And we have statistical significance of the improvement in all the different levels of state of mind, from grit to sense of peace to productivity to everything. There's a significant improvement. So that's kind of the basic nuts and bolts. But there's much more information on the veteranspath.org website.
What about someone who's this sounds like something that my cousin, my nephew, my neighbor, my aunt, that they need, and I don't have enough money to fly them to, San Francisco, but I'd love to contribute. But obviously anybody can go there and click the donate tab. I'm looking at the website now, but how else can folks be involved and contribute?
Yeah, definitely through the donation tab on our site, you can do that. We have the podcast, and you by listening to the podcast, we have a revenue generating stream there. I mean, it's not a whole lot, but it does help. And then you can obviously donate through the podcast. And then we do have fundraisers, periodic fundraisers. This month, as a matter of fact, here in Virginia, the Restaurant of Texas to Brazil they have a write-in donation for Veterans Path, and then another nonprofit that we partner with here locally in the Virginia area called Trails of Purpose. And they do equine therapy. But yeah, so we reach out to different donors, but then there's also the donation piece on the website, and then fundraisers. So that's how you can help out.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that's good. What questions should I be asking you that I haven't asked you about this, and what your passion is about that? Since you are transitioning
man, I think
out.
we've covered a pretty good bit. That talking about transitioning out, that is another piece that we are looking to incorporate into that strategic pivot, because military transition is very stressful, right?
Yeah.
And as you well know, the loss of identity, or at least the thought of the loss of identity, hanging up that uniform, loss of a mission, loss of purpose,
Right.
that can be stressful. And we want to bring mindfulness into the transition assistance programs here in the next 5 to 10 years. And we're hoping to start something out at Fort Carson at Colorado Springs with a pilot program, starting very small. But ultimately, our goal is to make Veterans Path that tool within the transition piece that focuses on more than just helping to find a job, more than just resume refinement, which are all very important pieces
Right,
to the transition.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. But there's a mindset piece that needs to be addressed as well. And equipping our transition veterans with that mindset, with the tools of mindfulness and meditation, are going to help them through that stressful time. I mean, hell, I'm living it right now, going through it myself. And I'm a mindfulness teacher and practitioner, meditation practitioner. And it's stressful, man. That's one thing I will say. Mindfulness and meditation does not stop stress. That's the one, people are like, oh, how can you be stressed? You're a mindfulness practitioner. Well, it actually makes you more aware of the stress, but it does help you to handle it better.
Okay.
You were talking about the pain in your back, right?
Yeah.
It makes you more. It may make you more aware of a particular pain, but then it also helps you to handle it better. You may realize, this is only a 4. It's not a 7 like I thought it was.
Right.
Same with stress. You're going to get the same stresses coming at you, but you're going to realize, this is only a 4 level stress. It's not the 7 that I thought it was.
Yeah.
So they've actually done studies of meditators, and some meditators are actually more stressed because they're noticing the stress, but they handle it better, if that makes sense.
That does make sense.
They're able to actually handle the stress that they're exposed to better. So in a sense, they're healthier mentally, even though they're noticing that there's more stress in their lives. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but that's an important piece to cover. So thanks for giving me that chance to cover something else.
Yeah, no problem. And the other thing I'm realizing too is just the value this would give parents, to give them a tool for their kid who's, late high school or early college age. Think about the stressors there. Like you're not directly, but you're competing with your peers to get the right acceptance letter, to get all the tests in order. You're stressed out about everything, what grade you're going to get, all these things. And then you pick some faraway campus and you don't realize just how hard it is to move away completely from your support system. And obviously, like, parents are like, you have to stick to it until you don't. And you don't want to say stick to it to the point where your kid kills themselves. So this sounds like a valuable tool for someone who's trying to help their kid, their young adult, get through these kind of stressful, but in many cases, manageable situations through something like mindfulness and meditation.
Absolutely. And there's organizations that are starting to pop up, and some schools are teaching it in their schools. That is ultimately a goal of mine, because I do have kids. I don't have, middle school or high school kids. I've got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. But they will eventually be in high school, and I would like them to have these tools that they can fall back on, because you're spot on. I mean, there is that need to compete or that pressure rather to perform. And it's not just from parents, right? Kids put it on themselves by looking at social media. I mean, there's 12 and 13-year-olds that have these right in their hands all the time, their cell phones, and they're on Facebook and Instagram, and they're seeing these awesome lives that all their friends and colleagues, or not colleagues, I guess, fellow students are living, but they're not real. Yeah. But they don't know that. There are tools that I hope do start to get propagated in our public school system, in our private school systems, just in our youth writ large. I think like I mentioned, they're being life-saving skills by giving it to people earlier on, giving it to service members earlier on, giving it to people earlier on in their lives, in the earlier stages of lives. It will in fact save lives. I know this for a fact. So yeah, I do hope that that's something that happens long term.
Well, listen, man, I mean, that's a great rundown of what you're doing, and I think pretty comprehensive in terms of how it applies to other things, what it is, and everything else. And I thank you and your crew for working on these problems, because 22 a day is not going to be solved by some single piece of legislation. It's going to be solved by a variety of things. And your solution, not likely to be my solution, And so all I can do is say, I've been doing it. It's been working. You're doing it. It's working. Let's all help each other find their thing that works for them, whether it's in the water, on a horse, or, whatever, as long as it's a healthy thing that allows them to want to stay alive,
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Well, thanks for this opportunity to share what it is we're doing, and share the kind of ideas behind mindfulness and meditation. If people aren't able to come join us for Veterans Path, I hope that they're able to tap into mindfulness and meditation for their own right and in their own way, like you mentioned, different modalities. So thanks again, and I really appreciate this opportunity.